Joe Biden is just weeks away from the White House after his US election victory was formalised by the Electoral College. Electors in key battleground states cast their votes confirming the president-elect's victory. Donald Trump has refused to concede defeat, repeating claims of fraud. But Joe Biden says the true will of the people has been realised.
We saw something very few predicted, even thought possible. The biggest voter turnout in the history of the United States of America. A number so big that this election now ranks as the clearest demonstration of the true will of the American people. One of the most amazing demonstrations of civic duty we've ever seen in our country. It should be celebrated, not attacked. More than 81 million of those votes were cast for me and Vice President-elect Harris. That, too, is a record. More than any ticket has received in the history of America.
With me now is Mark Watson, our regular international affairs and security expert from Bondi Partners. Mark, thanks very much for your time. Let's start. Give us a sense about what the Electoral College vote, the significance of that. We don't, in the years gone by, electoral cycles, we haven't really focused much on it. But this time it's carried a bit of weight.
Absolutely. All the states now have voted, and the votes add up to almost an exact mirror image of the last election when President Trump won. As Joe Biden's pointed out, if it was a landslide then, it's a landslide now. I'm not sure the president accepts that. But the significance is that now the votes are in, they will be transported to Washington, D.C., and on the 6th of January, a joint sitting of the Houses of Congress will count the votes formally, declare a winner of the election, and then it is just a 2-week countdown to the inauguration on January 20.
So the claims of fraud, the legal bids, they've all been knocked over one by one.
That's right. The Supreme Court 9-0 rejected the latest bid by Trump supporters to have the results of the election declared invalid. Very significant, obviously, because 3 of those 9 were actually appointed by Donald Trump in his presidency. So, yeah, from this point on, in years gone by, you would say it's absolutely nothing can happen from this point, but you want to leave a 1% because it's been such a crazy year and a crazy election. So.
Yeah, leave the 1%.
Yeah.
And, well, you've been a student of US politics for a long time, and you served in Australia's embassy in Washington as the security advisor there. When you look back at administrations of the past and electoral transitions of the past, does anything go close to what we've seen?
Barring illness or some other unforeseen event that's prevented an outgoing president engaging fully in the process, no, I'm not aware of anything that matches this. It's still an even money bet whether the outgoing president turns up on Inauguration Day, which would be a terrible look for the United States, and of course would only stoke the concerns and the angst of that chunk of the population that still believes that Donald Trump won the election. It's hard to put a number on it, but if only half of the people who voted for him believe that he actually won, that's well over 30 million Americans who have concerns about the legitimacy of the incoming president.
And some surveys suggest 9 in 10 of those that vote for him, the approval rating has gone up in that cohort since the election. So it's a big chunk of the population, but we saw at the election it wasn't enough to win.
No.
So this will be a difficulty for the Republican Party to navigate, won't it?
Very much so. I mean, you're almost creating 2 Republican parties. There's the Trump clique or faction, and then there'll be the non-Trump. It's going to be a very difficult path for the Republicans for at least the next 2 years till the midterm elections. When there will be some residual Trumpism, if you like, in the Republican Party. Beyond that, who knows? But just for US democracy, not having an outgoing president turn up on Inauguration Day would just be a terrible, terrible look and would set a very bad tone.
Bill Barr, the Attorney General, or outgoing now, he's quit. This has been one of the relationships that Donald Trump has criticised him from time to time. He had urged him to take proceedings against Joe Biden. And it was one of the things that really held up in terms of the United States, their institutions, was the Department of Justice, that those individuals would not succumb to the pressure. And now he's gone 35 days out from the inauguration.
That's right. I mean, this one's a little opaque because both parties have been very complimentary about the other. So the president wrote for him a very complimentary tweet as the Attorney General's leaving, and the Attorney General in turn wrote a very complimentary letter of resignation. But there's no doubt the President was very unhappy with the Attorney General for not allowing the investigation of Hunter Biden, the incoming President's son, to proceed during the election period. That was entirely in keeping with Department of Justice guidelines, but nonetheless it made the President unhappy.
And it certainly did make him unhappy. And as you look now to the Biden-elect, the speech today, the appointments being made, again, it goes back to that normality of a presidential approach, doesn't it? Is that part of his strategy to try and reassure people that we're getting back to normal?
I think the moment Joe Biden is in the White House, you'll see his team gather very quickly. As we've discussed before, they're a very experienced, very well-credentialed team on all levels. They know how government works, and the messaging very quickly will be, I'm governing for all Americans. I have government back on track. America really can be great again.
And there's no expectation that Donald Trump will, go off quietly into the wilderness, will he? Or, off to the golf course?
It'd be very unusual for him. That's not his personal style. Exactly what that looks like, hard to tell. Does he become almost a government in exile, running his own media outlet, for example, running a lot of anti-government material? Does he try and work from within the Republican Party, as I say, to establish some kind of Trump faction within the Republican Party? The next 2 years will be very interesting politically.
It sounds like it would be a lucrative option, given he's got tens of millions of supporters, if he were to try and monetise it via the media. He's done it before.
I think he's well and truly on top of that prospect, and that's why he's talking about actually having his own media network. He fell out with Fox News in America, as we know, and so he must be attracted to being able to control his own media outlets.
Back to Australia, the relationship with China goes from bad to worse. Now it's coal in their sights. What do you make of this latest development?
It's not confirmed officially yet that China will be singling Australia out to prohibit our coal imports. If that were to happen, hugely significant. Previously, it's been quite niche exports: wine, live seafood, timber, particular beef producers. But there's always been a sense that if we could ring-fence those smaller parts of our export trade, we could get through this. Iron ore and coal, very different thing, two of our two largest exports. And that would substantially impact on our national economic well-being. So if coal is affected by this, it's a whole new level of dispute. And I think that one of the reasons we're all having trouble quite understanding this is China does not see this the way we see it. For us, it's a no-brainer that this is a mutually beneficial trading arrangement. We are both enriched by this trade relationship. Right now, China sees this as a vehicle to punish Australia. Right now, I can't help but feel that China is inflicting pain for pain's sake. It's the same way that even though it's a cost to China in its own right, in the same way that we would imprison a criminal and accept that it costs $150,000 a year to the taxpayer, so China will wear a cost to punish Australia and to urge us to reform our ways and change our attitudes towards China.
But Australia hasn't done that and won't buckle on any of the main points. So is that then a risk to China to say, look, your strategy, your bullying doesn't work, and other countries will see that as well and follow suit?
Well, in their terms, it may work, because, as I say, the modern history of China shows they are more than willing to bear very high costs to make a point, ideological point, a national point, a political point, whether it was in the war in Korea in the 50s, the war with Vietnam in the 70s, the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution. These all came with enormous human costs, but China felt it was a price it was willing to pay. So if China is in fact looking at this as a way to punish Australia, it will accept that there's a cost associated with that. The fact that it doesn't make us change our attitudes, they only lose if you think that's only what they're trying to do. And I don't believe that is all that they're trying to do.
Yeah, right. It's just to say, look, there is a result if you go along those lines. So where does it stop?
Yeah, well, that's the difficult thing, because the only party in this dispute that knows, when the punishment is enough is China. And I think, as we've said before, it's like a big dog with a little dog by the scruff of the neck, giving it a shake, and only the big dog is the one that knows when it's going to let go.
And one of the, if you look at the next few years, one of the points on the diary, the timeline, which I think is interesting as well, is the Xi Jinping, the end of his 10 years. they've changed the constitution. Many people assume he's got another 5, but he might not. So what internally, it's, as you say, use the word opaque before. This is so opaque, the goings on of the Communist Party, but there might be some internally saying, look, we don't want this aggressive, confrontationalist approach.
Xi Jinping has been incredibly effective at eliminating opposition, sometimes physically, but politically certainly. You know, what's incredible, Kieran, is that it was only 5 or 6 years ago that Xi Jinping was here in Canberra. He was addressing a joint sitting of the Houses of Parliament as an honoured guest. He spoke glowingly about the goodwill that he'd experienced by the Australian people towards the Chinese people. He spoke of this vast ocean of goodwill that was fed by steady streams of mutual understanding and friendship. Well, right now, that vast ocean looks like a pretty forbidding place with a lot of stormy weather, and those steady streams of mutual understanding and friendship, they've dried up.
But they have, and there hasn't been, just finally, there hasn't been one of those off-ramps like an ASEAN or APEC summits or G20 where you might be able to say one-on-one, Prime Minister to President, let's have a few words on the sidelines. Those sort of opportunities haven't been around in COVID.
No, that's right. And the Chinese officials and political leaders have in fact imposed a boycott of their own. They're boycotting Australia's counterparts.
Mark Watson, I appreciate it. Great to see you as always. Mark Watson from Bondi Partners.